We are being joined now by a professor, former chair of the Pan-African Studies Department at Cal State LA. She's also lead organizer for Black Lives Matter LA. And you have another title now. I'm talking about Dr. Melina Abdullah. Good morning.
Good morning, Sister Dominique.
Man, so much to talk about. We need another couple hours, but we're going to get as much into the time that we have as we possibly can. A lot of eyes are focused when we think about the work of Black Lives Matter, when we think about the police reimagining work on Minnesota right now. I don't know. We don't have to spend the whole time on this. I know we've got a lot of local issues that I want to take a look at and some other things we need to talk about. But give me your quick take or what we're missing about Minnesota, both the Derek Chauvin trial and the situation with Daunte Wright.
Yeah, I think that the frame is really bothering me in mainstream media. So as we're watching both the Derek Chauvin trial and also watching what's happening around the murder of Daunte Wright, there's a couple of things that are coming out. One, we're hearing mainstream media talk about, Kim Potter and talk about Derek Chauvin as bad apples, right? As kind of aberrations in the system of policing. And it's really important that we remember that the system of policing hails from the system of slave catching. And the targets that are on the backs of Black people are intentional. And so it's beyond holding Derek Chauvin accountable. It's beyond holding Kim Potter accountable. It's beyond holding the officers accountable who stole the lives of Kenneth Ross Jr. and Grishario Mack here in Los Angeles. It's really about recognizing that what creates safe communities is investment in resources, and police all too often create unsafety. And so it's important that we look at the entire system of policing as well as attempting to hold those officers who are most violent and abusive accountable. So that frame is bothering me as we look at Derek Chauvin, especially in that trial, and then framing him only as a bad apple. We have to remember he was also a training officer, right? So how did who he is affect the entire Minneapolis Police Department? The other thing that's coming out and that relates to one of the campaigns that we're doing here in Los Angeles, one of our primary campaigns, is the role of police associations. So police associations, which often call themselves unions, it's the Minneapolis Police Association that's paying for the defense of Derek Chauvin, right? Even though he was fired from the Minneapolis Police Department, they're paying for his defense. Kim Potter was actually president of the Brooklyn Center Police Officers Association. And then here in Los Angeles, we know that the LA Police Protective League is headed by somebody named Jamie McBride, and his daughter, Tony McBride, murdered Daniel Hernandez almost a year ago. We know that the LA Police Protective League has been lining up to support the murderer of Grishario Mack. We know that the Association of Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs is protecting the sheriffs who murdered Ryan Twyman, who murdered Andres Guardado, who murdered Dejan Kazee, who murdered Fred Williams. And so we have to look at the role of police associations and attempt our campaign here is to end police associations. So those are the things I would look at, as well as when we look at the uprising that's happening in Brooklyn Center. We have to remember, as they talk about quote unquote violence, that property damage is not the primary violence. The theft of Daunte Wright's life is the primary violence. And so we have to be sure to constantly shift that narrative away from the criminalization of protesters and towards how police steals the lives of Black people.
Yeah, a lot of great points. I mean, one of the things about the whole bad apples theories, as soon as you start saying that, you can delude yourself to think that if by some miracle Derek Chauvin is convicted, that, you know, and that would be a great thing, that means now, you know, things are okay with the Minneapolis Police Department. We're done. Our work here is done. And we know that's not true. And I think the case of Daunte Wright highlights that. You know, I said this on yesterday. You just needed to go a couple of months of the trial without killing anybody. And you couldn't do that. You just needed to go a couple of months, and you couldn't do that. So clearly that is baked into the system. I mean, you talk about getting rid of police associations. How do you do that? Is this a slippery slope because they call themselves unions? I mean, doesn't any worker have a right to unionize? How can we abolish, even though I'm the one that's always saying they're really not unions, they're cartels, how do we, the public, stop police associations or fundamentally change their function?
Well, what we're working on is trying to, so we're not talking about taking away their collective bargaining rights, right? But what we are talking about doing is exactly what you said, that they're not unions. And so they shouldn't be affiliated with the labor movement. They should be ousted from the House of Labor. And so that's number one. So right now, in most labor formations, they are part of the House of Labor. They're in Los Angeles County, both ALADS and the LA Police Protective League sit at the table with the rest of organized labor, including my union. I'm part of the California Faculty Association. We don't think they belong at the same labor table. Think about how traumatic and it continues the abuse when we think about the fact that Ryan Twyman's sister, Chiquita Twyman, is a delegate to the LA County Federation of Labor and has to sit across the table from an association that stole the life of her brother, right? So they need to be ousted from the House of Labor. We also need to take away their undue power, right? So we need to end the Police Officers' Bill of Rights. We saw a tremendous movement in Maryland this week with the end of POBAR there. We need to make sure that they have extra accountability, not extra rights. And then we also need to take away their ability to bully and bribe elected officials. So one of the reasons that they even have extra rights is because they have really a stronghold on kind of lobbying of elected officials, which in a way, this is when I love the term cartel. They serve as a cartel in bullying and bribing elected officials. So those are the things that we're talking about doing as part of our effort to end police associations. So the emphasis is not ending their collective bargaining, but ending their affiliation with labor and ending their extra rights.
Talking with Dr. Melina Abdullah of BLM LA. You can call us 520-KJLH, 520-5554. I want to talk about, before I let you go today, want to talk about the local cases, because sometimes we get so focused on the national, we forget we got to sweep around our own front door. Want to talk about that, and then the extraordinary conversation pushing back on these right-wing narratives which are swamping the mainstream media about BLM. And whatever else you've got on your agenda, that's coming up next. It's the Front Page, Radio Free 102.3 KJLH. Talk to me about today's event. I don't want this morning to slip away without talking about what's going on today.
Sure. So today and every Wednesday, we demonstrate outside the LA Police Protective League headquarters. And today especially, we're going to be lifting up the names of Grishario Mack and Kenneth Ross Jr., whose angelversaries just passed. So people will remember on April 10th, 2018, Grishario Mack was gunned down inside of a crowded Crenshaw Baldwin Hills Mall by LAPD officers as he was having a mental health challenge and had asked for help. They claimed he was armed with a small kitchen knife, and they shot him dead in the middle of a crowded mall. And so we're going to be lifting up Grishario Mack. The officer who killed him were found to be out of policy, but nothing has happened. They haven't been prosecuted. And so we're working towards justice in his name. And then Kenneth Ross Jr. was murdered at Rowley Park just a day later, April 11th, 2018. He was doing absolutely nothing. He was simply running in the area. And Michael Robbins from Gardena Police, who had previously shot 3 other people, opened fire with an AR-15 and murdered Kenneth Ross Jr. We're working towards justice in his name, trying to get a new law passed to the Kenneth Ross Jr. police decertification bill, which we know that district attorneys almost never prosecute police who kill our people, but at the very least, we can get the state to take away their guns and badges so we won't have any more Michael Robbins who murder people in one locale and then get a job in another. And so that's also moving. So we want everybody to join us today at 3 p.m. at 1313 West 8th Street. That's 1313 West 8th Street. As we lift the names Grishario Mack and Kenneth Ross Jr. and also, rally to end police associations and take away their power in a national context that we just talked about. The police associations are paying for the defense of Derek Chauvin, who stole the life of George Floyd, and Kim Potter, who just stole the life of Daunte Wright, was the president of her police association. So again, please join us today, 3 p.m., 1313 West 8th Street.
By the way, Dr. Abdullah, Ramadan Mubarak. Happy Ramadan, I guess is how you say it.
Yes,
day
Ramadan
2, right?
Kareem. Yeah, Ramadan Kareem. It's a blessed, holy period, and it gives us... we know that spiritual fortification is really, really important as we struggle for justice. And so the struggle for justice is all the more important and all the more empowered during this holy month of Ramadan.
Indeed it is, and that's always a good thing. You have got a lot going on. Talk to me. Okay, we are now seeing the return of this situation with David Lacy, the husband of the former district attorney who pointed a gun in your face one morning while Front Page was on the air. Where are we with that?
Yes, so yesterday we had a hearing, and David Lacy's defense attorney is asking for diversion. We need to remember that Jackie Lacy was staunchly opposed to diversion. Diversion is something that usually for nonviolent offenses removes jail time, and it tends to be kind of a mechanism for restorative justice. It's generally, in fact, we heard from one assistant district attorney that it's never been used for a gun charge, but they're trying to get it for this gun charge. And
wow.
What we're looking at is and just for the context of Front Page family who may not have seen what happened, it is posted on our social media. But we did a demonstration early morning in front of Jackie Lacy's home. And when we went to ring her front doorbell, her husband met us with a gun, pointed the gun at my chest, and said, "I will shoot you." Had his finger on the trigger. Anything could have happened. Thankfully, we were prayed up, and I believe we had a hedge of ancestral protection around us, so no one was physically harmed. But it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life and of many people's lives. And so they're saying what he's asking for is, I think, 10 weeks of anger management classes, and then his record would be expunged and he would have his gun rights restored, 100 hours of community service, and that would be that. And, we're saying that even though we don't believe in a carceral state, at the very least, even as we take a transformative or restorative justice approach, at the very least, his gun rights should be permanently revoked. This is not somebody who should have access to firearms. And so we're going to be launching a letter writing campaign to the judge because we also know that the system is all bound up together. So unfortunately, the prosecution is not advocating for a harsher sentence than the defense is. The only debate is whether or not he should get to keep his gun even during the diversion period. So the prosecution says for 12 months he shouldn't have a gun, and the defense says no, he should even get to keep his gun during the diversion period.
So the irony of that is stunning. So they want for him what Jackie Lacey did not allow for most black men who would be in a similar situation, or any of them, I should say. Stunning.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Stunning. What is it? 3 reports now we have about the LAPD abusing protesters last summer around the George Floyd protests. And what will happen? Will anything happen? Are we and how is there any alternative to these reports? The reason I ask that is because they seem like they're all being done by police officials. Is there any report being done by an independent kind of body?
There are no independent reports. They're all hugely problematic, but they do point to the abuses. So what we do see in the reports is them saying that the abuses happened under the direct orders, that's a quote, direct orders of LAPD Chief Michael Moore. So he directly ordered the use of rubber bullets, the use of pepper spray, the use of tear gas, the use of batons, this process of criminalizing protest that was really grounded in this principle of nonviolent direct action. He directly ordered that. None of the reports say that he should face any repercussions, but the community says that this is the kind of police chief that needs to be immediately removed because he's one of the worst of the worst. And so there's a petition moving at tinyurl.com/fire LAPD Chief Moore, tinyurl.com/fire LAPD Chief Moore. And we're saying that he needs to be removed. We also need to remember that Michael Moore himself pulled the trigger in 2 police shootings, killing at least 1 person. And so he himself is a killer cop. So the direct orders are a problem. But the other issue that's a huge problem is the conclusion that's reached in all of these reports is that they need more training. We have to remember that when they say police need more training, that's code for they need more money. LAPD does not need more money. It already gobbles up more than 54% of the city's general fund. They're going for even more than that this budget cycle. We need to make sure that we say, no, you don't reward bad behavior with more money. What you do is look for different approaches. And so we want to invest those dollars in the things that we know actually work. So there's national studies. There was a recent profile of your brother's city, Newark, New Jersey, where he's investing in community solutions to public safety, that is the most effective approach. And Los Angeles has a really powerful team of folks like Skip Townsend and Second Call, folks like Akila Sherrills and the Reference Project, who are doing work around community-based solutions to public safety, and those are the most effective means. So we don't want to spend more on LAPD. We want to spend more on intervention work, on prevention work, and then on making sure that we meet the needs of community, providing things like housing through organizations like Los Angeles Community Action Network. And then we want to encourage everybody to understand how problematic LAPD is by following the work of Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, which for years has been lifting up why LAPD is so abusive and how the best mechanisms to interrupt that abuse.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. A lot of content that we need to pay attention to. Look, I want to talk about what cases are going on locally. We'll do that, and one of your proposals to deal with the death of Daunte Wright, which has national implications. That's Straight Ahead Radio Free 102.3 KJLH. This right here is about as newsworthy as it gets, so this will serve as our news report right now. I really want to get through some key points that are going on. One of them, Dr. Abdullah, you guys are proposing an end to police at traffic stops, and this is something that could have possibly saved the life of Daunte Wright.
Yes, absolutely. So we know that Daunte Wright shouldn't have been stopped in the first place, right? There's some discussion over whether it was about expired tags or an air freshener that was hanging from his rearview mirror. And we know that either way, if police hadn't been involved in those stops, Daunte Wright would still be with us. And so Marquise Harris Dawson and Mike Bonin had previously proposed a motion here in Los Angeles that would remove police from traffic stops. And we want to make sure that we advance that motion in the name of Daunte Wright, also in the name of people like Daniel Hernandez, who was killed during a traffic stop. If it had have been the Department of Transportation instead of LAPD, Daniel Hernandez would still be with us. And so we're encouraging everybody to call into City Council this morning and offer general public comments saying that if they're going to say, and, you know, city officials like to lift up the names of people whose lives are stolen across the country, well, there's something they can do right here. Remove police from traffic stops in the name of Daunte Wright. It doesn't mean that we're going to, you know, not enforce the law, but it means that we don't need police to do it. It's really easy. Everybody's gotten, you know, red light tickets before. Everybody knows that there's an entire Department of Transportation that could be used for this purpose. And we're saying police should not be used for traffic stops. There are other mechanisms.
So that means that police in that scenario would only pull people over if they had a criminal suspicion or something like that. It wouldn't just be, oh, your tags are expired, you have a air freshener or something like that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Let's talk. Ooh, so much still left. Talk to me, if you want to, a little bit about the extraordinary statement that that Patrisse Cullors put out on yesterday. These attacks on Black Lives Matter started with the talking point about, Black Lives Matter doesn't like family, which is complete BS, but now has gone on to attacks about money, about homes, about, on and on it goes. And they're going into the mainstream media. I've had a lot of people calling me alarmed. What would you say about the attacks on Black Lives Matter, Patrisse, and yourself in particular?
Sure. We have to remember that anytime a Black freedom movement is successful, they're attacked, right? There's attempts to, they use three mechanisms, right? They threaten the lives, but especially that third, the attempt to discredit the movement. So they're attacking Patrice for owning homes, right? We have to remember that Black Lives Matter organizers are not paid to be organizers. We have completely different jobs. So Patrice is a New York Times best-selling author. She has a television development deal with Warner Brothers. She's been fortunate enough to earn enough money to finally buy housing for herself, her mother, her brother, and her family. And so to be attacked for owning homes, which is what this attack is really an attempt to discredit the movement. And we have to be smart enough to say that when the right wing comes for our people, we're going to stand tall, stand strong, and protect our people, protect our freedom fighters. And so it's really important that we understand this for what it is. It's a discreditation effort. That means we need to double down in movement work. It means that we need to refuse to amplify their stories.
Absolutely. It's just idiocy. And as a child whose family was targeted by COINTELPRO, I'm hoping we will be a little smarter this time and just not go for the okie doke. I really, really am. And I pray for you guys, for your safety and your well-being in this, and the community to put our arms around you guys.
I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. And we ask everybody to keep us in your prayers and also uplift us wherever you can, push back against that narrative. Black women have a right to own homes. Black women have a right to a living, and our organizers have to be protected. And we're very grateful for you for always allowing us to put forward what our agenda actually is, and amplifying and doing work that's consistent with freedom struggle in the name of your family, but also the tremendous work that you've done.
Thank you. We just have a few seconds really left, but I just wanted to give you this moment. If there's local cases that you want to put the light on as we continue to talk about Minnesota, what about LA?
Yeah, so again, today we're lifting up Grishario Mack and Kenneth Ross Jr. We're inviting people to join us for the demonstration today at 3 o'clock, 1313 West 8th Street. We need to remember to say names of the local folks who've been killed by police. We know that LAPD shot 8 people in a span of 14 days. And so we have to focus on what's happening locally as well as what's happening nationally.
All right, and I suggest folks go to the Black Lives Matter LA website and follow on social media at BLM LA to stay abreast of what's going on.
Yes, BLMLA.org and BLMLA on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. BLMLA.org, BLMLA on Twitter, and Doc Melly Mel on Twitter.
Yes.
Dr. Melina Abdullah, thank you. I hope people don't lose sight of the fact that if not for Black Lives Matter, if not for BLMLA, so many of the advances we're seeing right now would not happen. It is surprising to me that the right took this long to start attacking you guys. Let's not be stupid. Let's be smart and remember who stands for our community and our progress. Thank you so much, Dr. Melina Abdullah.
Thank you so much.